The Trump administration is presenting Ukraine with proposals to end the war. A senior Ukrainian official tells ABC News the agreement would allow Russia to remain in control of virtually all of the Ukrainian territories it now occupies. The move comes after Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the U.S. was ready to, quote, move on from stalled negotiations. Peace talks are underway in London right now, but Rubio says he won't be there due to logistical issues. But Ukraine's envoy Keith Kellogg is there. Let's bring in ABC News foreign correspondent Tom Soufi-Burridge for more. Tom, what do we know so far about these proposals and Russia's reaction?
Yeah, Russia said very little about a concrete proposal, Diane, for a ceasefire in Ukraine. But we know that in private, the Russians have been speaking to Steve Witkoff, Trump's envoy. And after those conversations, we now understand from a senior Ukrainian official that the US has presented a proposed plan for a ceasefire to the Ukrainians. Now, what's significant about what we're learning about this is that it appears that Russia has told the US that it is willing to move away from some of its more unrealistic demands. For example, in the past, it was saying that it would need to occupy the entirety of 4 Ukrainian regions, which at the moment, the Russian military only occupies in part. So Russia is creating the idea that it is willing now to make concessions to put the pressure on Ukraine. But for the Ukrainians, they wouldn't be real concessions because under this deal, if it were to be agreed on and go ahead, then Russia would still hold about 20% of Ukrainian land. One very sensitive issue, Crimea, occupied by the Russians 10 years ago, according to media reports, the US might be willing to recognize Russia's claim over Crimea in this potential deal, although US officials haven't confirmed that. What US officials are really doubling down on, and we've been hearing this from JD Vance, the vice president, on his trip to India within the last few hours, is that the US is losing patience. If Ukraine and Russia cannot make a deal soon, US officials keep stressing they're willing to walk away from a deal. Take a listen to JD Vance speaking just a short time ago.
We've issued a very explicit proposal to both the Russians and the Ukrainians, and it's time for them to either say yes or for the United States to walk away from this process. And I think that we've put together a very fair proposal. We're going to see if the Europeans, the Russians, and the Ukrainians are ultimately able to get this thing over the finish line.
I think, Diane, one thing really to hit home to people is that, it is confusing right now. We're not clear about some of the issues, some of the details, some of the complexities. The US is really putting the pressure on. Ukraine is trying to say, well, look, actually, we were willing to accept a 1-month ceasefire a while ago. The Russians are not. And Russia is trying to make it out that Ukraine is the problem, the obstacle to getting a deal. Diane?
All right, Tom Soufi-Burridge, thank you.